Hallo, willkommen.
Hello.
Mein Deutsch ist schrecklich, so we will be speaking English today. I hope that's okay with everybody. Thank you for having us. We can move to the slides. Yeah. Perfect. So my name is Katie Sidell Schneider. I'm from Watershed, and we are talking with Markus Pretz today, who will introduce himself as well. Watershed is an enterprise sustainability platform. We essentially decarbonize your business by doing lots of different things. First, we measure your carbon, right? We give you a great platform to enter your data. You can measure your carbon footprint in weeks instead of months with us. You can use our platform to report, prepare, and file all the disclosures you need to do. You can act on your data, which is so important. You can manage your sustainability, your agenda. You can manage your disclosures. You can do everything in one place. You can set all the targets and reduce the emissions that you need to do. And we also have an amazing partner network. We deliver really successful business outcomes with our partners by using their industry knowledge and expertise, and it's really valuable to our customers to have this alongside of us. So today we are going to have Markus take us through his CSRD journey with us at Watershed, and then we'll have a bit of Q&A at the end.
All right. Thanks so much. Thank you very much for having me. So this is now planned to do this in English, but if there are any questions in German, please feel free to ask. Although I'm not German, I still speak the German language, being an Austrian. So my name is Markus Pretzl. I am responsible on a group level for sustainability and health and safety at TIP Group. My employer is a highly polluting company. We contribute to global warming with approximately 1.3 million tons of CO2 of carbon per year. Also, we are closely associated with the road freight transportation industry, which is also a quite problematic industry by itself. Now, when you're driving on a German highway, as an example, you might spot a semi-trailer with an Amazon or a PostNL or DHL logo on the side of the trailer. Well, the chances are pretty high that this is one of our owned assets. And we own approximately 120,000 trucks and semi-trailers all over Europe that we lease and rent out to companies like Amazon, like DHL, and they're operating those assets. So this is our leasing and rental business. Secondly, we operate a quite extensive network of 130 workshops all across Europe, 17 countries, where we are providing maintenance and repair as well as refurbishment services on those assets. Also, after an average of 8 years, we are selling those assets to the second-hand market. And lastly, we understood, like many other organizations, that data is valuable. So we are using telematics data in order to help fleet operators to run their fleet more efficiently, but also to perform tire pressure monitoring, but also brake testing. Now, our total carbon footprint, we have about 98.3% of this is sitting within our supply chain. 35% of our total carbon emissions, it's coming from our customers, like Amazon, like DHL, operating our motorized assets, like diesel trucks, diesel refrigerated trailers, and we need to account for those emissions. 34% of our total carbon footprint, it comes from manufacturing the assets that we are purchasing per year. So we are investing approximately €500 million per year in acquiring new assets to rejuvenate our fleet. And 22% of our emissions, these are the emissions that incur after we sell an asset and then it continues its operating life. Now, the only reason that I can make those statements is because we were able to measure our carbon footprint. 1.5 years ago, this wouldn't have been possible. I wouldn't have been able to make this statement, and this is thanks to the cooperation with Watershed that we were able to, first of all, calculate our carbon emissions and then build a decarbonization journey. Now, when I was preparing for this session, I took a walk in Amsterdam, in one of the most beautiful areas in Amsterdam, I'm fortunate enough to live in Amsterdam, and I absolutely love this vibrant city. Some challenges in Amsterdam, it's usually the weather. Some people say that in Amsterdam the weather tends to be more of a challenge to mental health than sustainability teams working on the CSRD. And I have to admit that I have to agree with this statement. Now, during one of my strolls through Amsterdam, I came across the Hortus Botanicus. And I had to think of a metaphor about the CSRD that I would like to share with you. Because the Hortus Botanicus, it is the botanical garden of Amsterdam. It has this beautiful greenhouse that you see on the picture here. And so I thought, imagine a grand sunlit greenhouse in the middle of a bustling city, like the Hortus Botanicus in Amsterdam. It is not just a beautiful structure, it is also providing an ecosystem where a broad variety of plants can grow. Very similar to the CSRD. The CSRD is also providing an ecosystem for responsible business practices. The transparent walls allow visitors to take a peek inside, to look at the sustainability initiatives that corporates like TRP groups are working on. It gives stakeholders a good understanding what is the maturity of your sustainability program. The structure of the greenhouse, you can also look at this like the beams and the shrouds and compare this against the standards, the topical, the cross-sectional standards that are building the CSRD. And this is not only providing a structure, it's giving companies guidelines in how to conduct business in a more sustainable way. When we look inside this greenhouse, you will find a myriad of plants. And this is representing all of those sustainability initiatives that we see in a corporate environment. Just look at environmental initiatives. They can grow resilient like ferns, or social initiatives which can be represented by the blooming flowers. And then you have corporate governance standing there like sturdy trees. The businesses, people like myself, and I'm sure many people in this room right now, we are the gardeners tending to those sustainability initiatives, making sure that we are progressing. And we have visitors coming in, we have auditors, we have investors, we have the public that is coming in, walking the paths of sustainability, looking at those initiatives, taking a close look at them, and then judging the company based on their profile. Can't move on. Yes. Seasons are changing, and so is the CSRD also changing. Just think about the greenhouse one more time. You will have different kinds of plants that are growing depending on the season. Similarly, the requirements coming through regulation are also changing. And ultimately, what we hope is, with the sustainability, it won't just affect one individual enterprise. It will impact businesses in the surrounding and eventually the entire community. And this is why I think that the CSRD, it's incredibly valuable. Now, if we take a quick look to make this more relevant for practice, let me share with you the path that we took as TRP Group in order to prepare for the CSRD. The first step, of course, is you need to understand if the CSRD applies to your organization and also when will it apply. In our case, financial year 2025, so you can imagine that we are quite busy in getting ready for the CSRD. Secondly, and this is pretty much the foundation for everything, Wesentlichkeitsanalyse, in German, a double materiality assessment. Sustainability is so broad, so you need to zero in on the topics that are relevant to your business. A requirement of the CSRD is also that you're taking the outcome of the double materiality assessment and then embed this in your not only sustainability strategy, but more broadly in your corporate strategy. once you understand what are the material topics that you need to report against, you need to perform a gap assessment. What data is already available based on GRI reporting requirements, based on investor reporting, whatever it is, we are all confronted with a different set of ESG data requirements from the past. Now with the CSRD, based on a double materiality assessment, we need to re-evaluate this. And then it's about engagement with the key stakeholders internally, but also externally. So we should not underestimate the importance of the finance community within your organization. You might have already realized that it's not just about formulating a climate transition plan and talking about how many tons of CO2 or how you will improve your carbon intensity. You also need to do the entire financial modeling around your decarbonization plan. You need to engage with your auditor so you can get ready for limited assurance and then in future reasonable assurance. And then, and this is where we are getting to Watershed and our cooperation, you need to implement a CSRD ready reporting solution. And this is incredibly challenging. Why? We spend a lot of time screening the market, checking what are available solutions out there. Some of the big names, Sfera, Enablon, and so on. But what we realized is that there are some real roadblocks for us to use those solutions in order to comply with the CSRD. And we'll talk about this in just a moment. Very important, and I already mentioned this, governance. Limited assurance is the ultimate goal of the CSRD, right? So all those dreadful penalties that might come with non-compliance with the CSRD, it all depends on if your auditor, it's usually your financial auditor, many times one of the big four companies, if they have confidence in how you performed your double materiality assessment, if they have confidence in your data collection process, and in future, if they have confidence that the checks that you have in the system that you're using to consolidate all of the data, that they are properly in place. Then, and this is where we are right now as an organization, the actual data gathering and structuring. You need to bring the data together in one system. Excel is not good enough anymore. Many companies are using Excel as a fallback option, and I understand. But now with the CSRD, with the compliance requirements, with not only having quantitative data, but qualitative data that also varies a lot in scope, you cannot do this in Excel anymore. That's why the data collection and structuring, you need to have a proper tool in place supporting you with this. Then you need to craft your sustainability statement. The CSRD defines that a sustainability statement needs to be integrated in your integrated report in order to comply with the CSRD. We talked about this already, limited assurance. Limited assurance at this moment in time, it is a bit easier. It gives us a little bit more time to get used to this, to have those discussions with our auditors, to make them understand what are the limitations right now, what are the issues that you're working on at this moment in time. In future, reasonable assurance. So who of you have some experience with assurance on your financial statements knows that this is a whole different bar to clear in future, and we need to be well prepared for this. Publish your integrated report. I guess that you all know you can't just produce an internal report and then use this for internal purposes. You actually have to publish your report so it's readily available for the public. And then, of course, continuous improvement. So I used this metaphor before about the greenhouse, about the different seasons, that the CSRD is changing, ever changing. It's not only about the CSRD. We sometimes tend to forget that the EU taxonomy, which is a huge piece of legislation by itself, it is fully embedded in the CSRD. We are already looking with one eye at the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. Some of you that are working in Germany, that are working for German companies, you are familiar with the Lieferkettengesetz, right? But the CSRD is again a whole different level. And what we see is that eventually all of this will move closer and closer together. That's pretty much the entire path. I've prepared some more content about performing double materiality assessment, but I will pause this now for having a conversation with this beautiful lady, and then if we want, we can dive into this a little bit later. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you. I think we can all agree that is the most beautiful way to look at the CSRD that's ever been presented to anyone, ever, and ever will be. So wonderful slides and really well done, being very specific on your journey. I think it's really important that we come down from this 5,000-foot view of the CSRD, and we all know it's hard. We all know there's so many data points. We all know that spreadsheets won't work, as you mentioned, to actually disclose the CSRD. So what I would like to know is, what are the specific things about software that has made you decide to use it to streamline your disclosure approach at TIP?
Yeah, so I've mentioned this before. I feel like that there was an era before Excel, the phase out of Excel for sustainability reporting, and now we're getting closer to this area where you can't do this with Excel anymore. So what are the reasons? It's about the compliance requirements. So if you have an auditor looking into a broad variety of Excel files, it's going to be difficult to get to this level of reassurance that you can provide and comfort that you can provide to an auditor so that they will agree with your processes. Also, just think about GRI, the CSRD, TCFD, so whatever the reporting requirements are that you're dealing with, we tend to deal with all of them individually, and where software comes in really handy is that you can create this central database of data points that you're using for the data collection, that you're using to develop, for example, also the governance around those data points, and then you're tagging those data points for your different reports where you're using this. So for example, gender pay gap, a very central KPI that we're using in various reports. We only have the calculation once in our reporting solution, but we tag this KPI across different reports so we don't have to recalculate it for each and every report. And this is where software comes in incredibly powerful and also ensures consistency.
Yeah, amazing. And can you just expand on that a little bit on the topic of governance?
Yeah.
Using software. And yes, of course, there's features and functionalities that allow you to collaborate with our stakeholders in the business to help you with those hundreds of metrics that you need to disclose. But what about software when it comes to your actual governance and your assurance that makes it valuable to you?
Yeah. So I have a background in audit, and what I remember from audit is that as an auditor, you will highly appreciate if your engagement, the company that you're working with, is making it as easy for you as possible to understand the data, to understand the reporting. So the main benefit of using a tool like Watershed in our case is that we have the whole reporting manual, so the governance around the data collection, it's all sitting directly in the tool. So what we will do is that we can invite our auditor to this tool, they'll go in there, they can do all the checks on the data points in the platform itself, they can access the underlying data to this, and this is something that makes the auditor's life easier. Usually they appreciate this a lot, but also it makes my team's life easier because it's just much less workload coming towards us.
Yeah, definitely. And I think working with some of the customers at Watershed, another big proponent of working with software in this specific space is that you don't have to be in charge of all of your changes to your data, your updates. You also don't have to be in charge of your methodology that you're using to calculate all of your metrics, which, as we know, can be quite complicated. So can you talk about what it is about Watershed and our knowledge that made you want to work with us versus maybe other providers that don't have that knowledge in climate-specific science?
Yeah. I mean, I do understand that this sounds quite commercial. And look, we are here on the stage talking about, of course, our sustainability journey, but also Watershed. But the only reason why I'm here is that our cooperation with Watershed, it helped me to alleviate an immense pain point. So we started out with a reporting solution some years ago. We figured out that they are not really ready to deal with the CSRD, and then you start looking and you talk to the big names because you're willing to invest the money just for a solution that can actually deal with your pain points. Now, the big difference with Watershed is we should not forget that the ESRS and the data requirements, it's legal language. It's super complex. So you need someone that is helping you to translate this into a language that is understood internally by your internal stakeholders that actually understand, hey, what do we need to provide, right? And this is something where this very close support by Watershed helped us tremendously. And also, we engaged in this co-development for the CSRD solution in Watershed. So we pretty much have weekly meetings together with Watershed to create a solution that actually works in practice. And this is where I feel like there's a huge difference to other solutions that I've seen in the markets that would not live up to our requirements.
Yes, and Markus is correct. This is a bit salesy, but to be honest, we have so many data scientists that work at Watershed. We have so many consultants in the field that have come to work at Watershed. And what's important is that we've partnered with Markus to essentially go through the CSRD process before anybody else to answer all of the questions he needs, to write the guidance in a way that it comes and is digestible by a regular person who is not a lawyer. And I think it's been really valuable to my customers, and it's something we've worked really, really hard on as a company, to not just be a reporting platform, but climate expertise inside of that. I'd like to finish off our conversation today by talking about something that I think a lot of people have really struggled with, which is writing a climate transition plan. It seems like a very big thing. It's technically one metric you have to do on the CSRD, but it feels a lot more than just one metric. Can you talk to us about your process of writing that plan?
Yeah. So climate transition plan, it takes on average somewhere between 12 to 18 months to put together this plan. So what are the difficulties? Climate transition plan, it's your plan how you will decarbonize your organization, right? The first step is that you need to understand your carbon footprint. If you don't understand the challenge, it's going to be very difficult dealing with this challenge. So this is where Watershed came in, and this was actually our first touching point, the carbon accounting. Together with Watershed, we had a pretty good understanding for Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3, which is 98.3% of our total carbon footprint. We had no idea. So this is the first challenge. And the next step, you then need to model your decarbonization journey based on various scenarios. And again, this is something that we can do in Watershed, that we put in specific initiative, then we can model how those specific initiatives will impact our Scope 1, Scope 2 absolute emission, how they will impact carbon intensity, because we were aiming to set a science-based target intensity goal for our Scope 3 emission. We figured out, also thanks to Watershed, that this is not really feasible for a growing organization as we are, so we will go for an engagement target. Again, this is something that we can do together with Watershed. And once you have done all the carbon modeling around this, you need to engage into the financial modeling. And this is where you need to start to have the conversation with your finance teams. Do you have actually the financial forecasting and planning capacities in place to deal with those requirements? In our case, we need to do the whole financial planning about revenue, about CAPEX, about OPEX for our zero emission assets. But our conventional forecasting, it operates on a completely different altitude because it was always good enough. Now I'm having the discussions with our group controller, with the people also working with our chart of accounts, that we will bring this down to a level that we can actually create a P&L for our zero emission assets. And these are the kind of discussions, and this brings all the complexity into climate transition planning. But the first step, understanding your carbon footprint, actually understanding what is possible, what is a feasible decarbonization journey, this is again where a Watershed comes in.
Wonderful, thank you. I do have one more question, but I wanted to see if we had any questions from the audience, just in case. There is, yes.
So, thank you very much so far. You might have answered it in parts already, but I'll read it all the same. What was the hardest part of implementing the CSRD?
It's actually what I mentioned at the very end. Usually, as an ESG department previously, you were kind of independently dealing with those data requests. and you could get quite far. As long as you manage to get strong management buy-in, in our case, our shareholder, that they support us. But then when you go to the CSRD, and then when you start having these discussions with the financial teams, in many companies, they have the CSRD lead actually sitting with the CFO. And there's good reason for this. But these discussions with the finance teams, that they have a lot of expertise in financial reporting, that they are usually the owners of preparing an annual report, and then you come in as a sustainability team where you have some expertise in preparing a sustainability report, all of a sudden all of this needs to get together. There is big potential for stepping on each other's turfs, for conflict, so you need to be very, very cautiously engaging in this kind of internal stakeholder management.
Okay. How many ROI tickets did you have to create? IRO, I'm sorry.
Yes, what we did, and you will see this if I just click through real quick, in our double materiality assessment, we really started with ESRS AR16. So we looked at all the main topics, subtopics, subtopics, and then first of all, we prepared an exclusion list where we knew what are the subtopics that are not material to us. TIP group doesn't have a huge impact on biodiversity. We don't have a huge impact on water consumption. So we took out those topics. But then for all the remaining subtopics, we started looking into potential impacts and formulated the IROs. So for each subtopic that we in this pre-screening considered material to us, we formulated 2 impacts.
Okay, next question for you, Katie. If you worked for a smaller company, would you implement, oh no, sorry, wrong question. Does Watershed also empower their clients to their reporting independently after a while, or will you need the support year after year?
Yeah, so to be very clear, Watershed is software. We have amazing advisors, and you can purchase advisory services. And with Markus specifically, he's gotten a lot of advisory because he's helped us develop our CSRD product. But Watershed is actually created to be autonomous. You don't need consultants to use Watershed. It is user-friendly. We have an amazing learning hub where you can get all of the guidance that you need to use the tool. And I have customers all the time who completely autonomously do their entire GHG measurement, and they do reporting. Maybe not CSRD completely autonomously, because as we know, it takes a lot of people to do CSRD, but CDP, TCFD, they can do that on their own with the platform. There is support, of course. You can ask questions and get help from someone, but it is built for you to do it on your own. So you don't need a huge team of people around you, and that's the beauty of software.
All right. So last question for you, Markus. If you worked for a smaller company, would you implement the voluntary CSRD report? And if so, why?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It is challenging enough. Doesn't matter if it's a large corporate, like the one I'm working for, or a small enterprise. The voluntary requirements, that's something that might be good when you're developing your ESG strategy. It might put you on the lead for something that you were not thinking about previously. But focus on the compulsory requirements. This is challenging enough. Also, there is a little bit of a phase-in period. Don't try to do everything in year one. In our case, we are trying to do a dry run with 2024 data. It's also primarily to get our auditors up to speed, and then 25, when we were actually falling under the legal requirement, you don't want your auditors to see the data for the first time.
I can maybe add to that and say that I do have some customers that aren't required to disclose CSRD, maybe not now, maybe technically not ever, but they do like their report to be able to be compared against other people. So even though their company might be too small to be forced to do CSRD, they are thinking about doing their sustainability statement in reference to CSRD. The great thing is they can pick which metrics they want to disclose and which ones they don't, but they are trying to answer them in the same format, in the same type of way as CSRD. So if one day their business grows to a certain size, or so that they can benchmark themselves against people in their field, they can do that. So I agree with Markus, don't do everything, but definitely if you think that might be something down the road or you like the ability to benchmark yourself, have a think about just doing your internal sustainability report in reference to CSRD or picking out some metrics that you find really powerful and start measuring them now.
All right. In this case, thank you very much, Katie, Markus. Das ist euer Applaus. Dankeschön.
Dankeschön.